how long was she home?
9 days.
9 days. Happiest 9 days. And we just woke up one morning and she was fading out.
I'll never forget.
Nothing we could do.
It's crazy how much, I remember thinking this afterward, how much birth and death are the same. I remember looking at Ben that morning and saying, "Are you ready?" And I always say that when I'm in labor. I always look at him and I'm like, "Are you ready to go? Like, it's time now."
And you can't get a hold of anyone on the phone.
And oh my God. So we go up in the morning. So that the night before, Clementine went to bed early. She was grumpy. So we put Her Majesty to bed. We had friends over. The kids had a good time. She looked great. And then in the morning, we were going to go take down their central lines. And so basically what you do is you sterilize everything. You take the lines down, so you shut them off for the day, the IV fluids. And then you just make sure that the sterile caps are on and all that good stuff. And then I was going to get them dressed and ready to go. So I go up, and Beckett was sitting up and puking into his lap. And so my first reaction was, he was sitting there puking into his lap. And so they were sharing the same bed at this point. They liked to be close to each other. They would hold each other's hands. They were so sweet. And it was easier to do their care that way in the morning. So they shared this giant full-size bed, which is ridiculous because it's almost as big as bed in our bed. It's just these two little babies in it. And so I go to him and I'm changing him, and Clementine would always sleep with the blanket over her head. And so I could see her little feet poking out. And I'm done with him. He's not puking anymore. He's naked. I'm trying to get him dressed. And I pull the blanket back and I turned her over, and she was doing that. Like, I can't describe it. It's almost like breathing that they teach you when you're giving birth. And I looked at Ben and I was like, oh no. And so I'm calling the hospice nurse. I'm calling my nurses that my best friend and her friend, they live in Hartford. And so I'm calling them frantically. I'm calling my sister. We had a plan at this point. We always had a plan. And so the plan was, a girlfriend of mine that lives down the street was going to take Julia and Wilbur. And then Julia and Wilbur would come home when it was over. And so I got a hold of her. She came and got Julia and Wilbur. And we're still panicking because we can't get a hold of any nurse. We have no idea. She didn't look like she was any distress. I mean, we're given instructions on how to give morphine and end-of-life medication to make them more comfortable. And so I was like, okay, well, we're going to need to change the sheets. We're going to need to, down here, and we're going to need to put Clementine in her a fresh pair of pajamas. And it was so fast from the moment we saw her until she died was about 2 hours. It was really fast. She never needed any pain medication. It was really easy. I mean, the Sunday, 2 days prior to that, we had our Make-A-Wish party announcing that we were going to Disney that Thursday. Like, we were packing. I had just bought her a Minnie Mouse dress to go to Disney. Like, literally the day before I went out and bought it. And then she died, and that was it. And I remember looking at Ben, and it was almost like, the adrenaline started pumping again. Like, I looked at Ben and I was like, are you ready? And I just immediately took down our lines and got her undressed. And one of the nurses finally showed up, and we had just gotten into bed with her in our bed, and shut the door. And within 20 minutes, she was dead. With Beckett, Julie and I were at Target. And I remember our hospice nurse from the town was going away on vacation for the weekend. And I had said, oh, we were going to go Christmas shopping. And she was like, Allison, I would wait. She's like, I would wait to get Beckett's presents until Christmas Eve. She's like, because you won't want to return the gifts. And so we went out to Target because I was like, well, I'll be damned if I'm not getting him any gifts. And we got Advent presents instead. And so I went to the store and I picked up all the Advent gifts. And we're in the checkout line. And Ben called me and he said, you need to get home right now. And we were 30 minutes away. So I drove home with Julia, and he was, as soon as Ben handed him to me, I could just feel like just so heavy and just breathing really shallow, and wasn't really looking at anyone, couldn't really hear us like to respond. And so we called our pastor, had him come to the house, and we got ready. I mean, we had already done this. I mean, that kicks in that kind of false pride of like, well, we've done this before. We know what to expect, and so we're ready. And Beckett was the total opposite of Clementine. He had the slowest, hardest death. It was horrible. To witness as a parent, I can't even imagine what it was like for him. But that was probably like, mid-afternoon? So by the evening time, we had ordered I think, really gross chicken wings at that point. We're eating with our pastor, and we're kind of laughing and joking and passing him back and forth and holding him by the Christmas tree because he liked the lights. And around like 9 o'clock, he started to like perk up and like look around and was kind of looking at Julia and smiling. And John was like, okay, well, I'm going to go home. John is our pastor. I'm going to go home. And he's like, let me know if anything changes. And so Ben slept with Beckett that night. He was good that night. Right?
I slept with, actually, after Clementine had passed, and it kind of caught us. You know, you get caught with your pants down, like, oh my God, like that happened.
Well, we panicked
like,
about
yeah,
how
we were
long
panicking.
was she like that?
Yeah.
Like how long was she unresponsive, and we just didn't know.
Yeah.
And that we felt really guilty about was she suffering up there, and we weren't even there to comfort her. And so Ben and I took turns, mostly Ben, because I was nursing Wilbur at that point still. And so Wilbur and I slept here, and Julia slept in the girls' room, and Ben slept with Beckett in the big bed. And he and Ben slept together nicely, and in the morning we got up and the kids all sat on the bed together, and Beckett was playing and smiling and giving them hugs and kisses. And then around 10 o'clock, he kind of went limp and unresponsive. Like he took a nap and just didn't get back up. And so we called my girlfriend again, and she came and took the kids. And we called our pastor, and it was 8 hours of struggling. We were giving so much morphine. I remember at one point he was crying. And crying in like a listless, asleep and I can't get comfortable kind of a way. Like I couldn't comfort him. And the machine that they give you has a timer on it, so you can't press it.
I was literally just holding the machine, like waiting
for the next
to push
beat.
the button.
And the hospice nurses, again, had lives. I mean, it's before Christmas. I totally get it. But in that moment, as a frustrated parent, it was just, I couldn't control it, and it was making me frustrated. And so we're trying to unlock the machine to give him more morphine. I'm giving him oral morphine, the same dose you would give an adult in his tiny little 20-pound body. And just his breathing slowed. I mean, when they have the high ammonia, their breathing is really fast. You're talking like lots of reps per minute. Yeah. And then it slowed down to 20, and then 11, and then 5 a minute. And so you're waiting, and you're not breathing when they're not breathing because you don't want to miss it. And you're like staring. And I didn't want to put him down because the minute I put him down, he would cry, almost like, where did you go? And so I held him in the rocking chair upstairs by the window for 8 hours. We took turns, and I'll never forget, it was dark, like really dark. And we're sitting up there, and the pastor and Ben and I are sitting up there, and it's quiet, and he's breathing. And at one point, we thought he took his last breath, and I was like, I think that's it. And then he took another breath, and we all started to laugh because that's so Beckett, like. And while we were laughing, he took his last breath, which is kind of it's very bittersweet for us because that's who he was as a kid. He was always laughing. Always. But that was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I mean, you imagine it's going to be hard, and you make all these plans, and so many plans. There was so much paperwork. Oh my gosh. And we would always have powwows in the morning with the nursing team about, we would sit around and have our dining room table is usually in the other room, and we'd sit around it, and all the nurses would be there, and we'd be chatting about the day and kind of like an impromptu rounds at home. And we would always be talking about, okay, well, do you have all the funeral paperwork in place? Like, do you know what you're going to do once they pass? And you think you know what you're going to do, but then when you're actually doing it's death and birth are so much alike. They are so parallel because you have a birth plan. You know what you're going to do. You're going to go in there and have a natural birth, or you're ready to have the epidural. And it's not that way. It's not. I mean, we thought Clementine was going to go with us to Disney, and we thought Beckett was going to be quick, just like Clementine. And they just weren't. It was not what we planned. I think for parents going home on hospice, or for thinking about the end for their terminal children, it would be, try to be as fluid as you can. Make sure you have a plans A through F, that you have a backup, that you're ready to do if such, and not to make a big deal, excuse me, not to make a big deal if plan A doesn't work. Because plan A wasn't meant to work. It was supposed to be plan C all along. And so just shift, move differently, a little different, and it'll be okay.